Hello and welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. Today on the program we have a band called Elder Island. I had a chance to chat with David Havard of Elder Island, and we had a freaking great conversation. We connected on so many levels. The Elder Island is made up of Katie Sargent, Luke Thornton, and David Havard, and we got the chance to talk about their rise to fame since 2019, the struggle it took to get there, and being able to operate as a band through COVID. So we'll get to that in just a few minutes here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time with the intro because honestly, I have to run over to my new house, the new house I just bought, which we talked about even a little bit in the interview, I believe. And I'm taking stuff there, I'm unloading, I'm gonna have to paint some walls, and I have to do that before it gets dark. So don't have a lot of time for this intro other than to say, got the keys to the house. I'm pretty excited. It's gonna be a big change for the family for sure, but the kids are embracing it and like the house. The new schools will take more time and adjustment to get used to them once they get started with that, but they don't have to worry about that until like August, right? So that's good. Right now, just every time I'm going over to the new house, loading up my car and taking stuff over, I'll have the big moving truck this next weekend to take most everything else that's not nailed down. We do still have to live in this current house for a couple more weeks, pushing us closer to the end of the school year until we're out, but I'm getting everything I can out. I mean, this morning I even took the dining room table out of the dining room and took that out to the garage so it can be loaded into the big moving truck, as well as all the chairs that go with it. We'll eat on the table out on the patio for the next couple of weeks. It's warm enough, it's nice enough out here, and no complaints, right? So making do with as little as I can and moving as much as I can on my own. I will admit that this is a challenge. This is tiring and exhausting to have to handle and coordinate and do all this on my own. I have a little help sprinkled in here and there from my mom, my sister. My buddy Joe's going to help me with the moving truck. I'm getting some advice here and there from folks, but this is all on my shoulders ultimately. And this is the first time. First of all, I haven't moved in 8 years. So it's been a long time since I've even had to move, which is great because I hate fucking moving. It's a pain in the ass. But this is the first time I've had to do it on my own since before I had kids as well. And so you accumulate a couple more things when you have children, and it gets a little bit harder to cross those bridges, right? So, and I'm doing it without movers. I'm pretty impressed. I was originally planning on getting movers for the move, but I figured just handle shit myself and get it taken care of. So it's been a lot of that. And also, saving some money where I can because shit's expensive. So figuring out like it. That's the jam right now. I was supposed to do a 70-mile ride with my buddy Joe today. We have our 100-mile ride on in 2 weeks. It's in less than 2 weeks actually in Santa Rosa. So we missed our ride today to practice, but hopefully we'll catch one up on the during the week to make sure that we're really prepared, because it's going to be quite a hefty task to do, but we're gonna do it come May 7th. So that's daunting and intimidating, but also I really look forward to it and meeting that milestone with my buddy. So should be fun. All right, like I said, not going to waste too much time on the intro. Going to bring in Elder Island. So I want to welcome in David Havard. Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I don't know if Katie should be here, but she's at home. She's not that great at the moment, but Luke is away today. He's in Thailand, lucky sod.
Thailand? Oh, what's he doing in Thailand?
He's just having a holiday at the moment. A really busy time either way.
Yeah, no complaints there, right? So well, we can get started without Katie, and if she hops in, then she can pick up from there. So thanks for taking the time. David, right?
Yep.
I'm Steve. So
Nice to meet you, Steve.
Nice to meet you as well. How's your day going so far?
Today's going all right. It's going okay. I've done a lot of accounting and admin and preparation today. I'm about to do a lot of DJ practice in a minute.
Yeah. Do you DJ a lot too?
I'm starting to again now. Yeah, now there's some like DJ gigs coming up that I've said yes to. I used to DJ a lot kind of before Elder Island. And I'm getting back into it again now off the back of it. So like, okay, it's kind of coming full circle again.
How do you get into DJing?
I bought some turntables before going to uni. Sort of like, it was like me and Luke have known each other for years. And we were in bands when we were like teenagers and stuff. But like just before moving to university in Bristol, I bought a set of turntables. Sort of when electro, Mastercraft and Justice and like all the Daft Punk, Ed Banger sort of stuff was getting big. Like I kind of got into DJing off of the back of that, and then moving to Bristol with having such a like big vinyl culture and clubbing culture, it just sort of, I got heavily into it at that point. So it was like during university, I was kind of DJing more, and it wasn't until after university that we actually like clicked doing the music thing more so. Yeah. Going back to the real instruments.
Yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned you've known Luke you've known him since you were 3, right?
Yeah. From a very young age. We were at reception, like drinking milk together.
Yeah.
When we were really young.
Have you been friends that whole time, or were there?
Kind of. It was more. He went to a different when we were in like what would be like year 2 or something around that kind of time. He went to a different school, but our parents still knew each other. And they played tennis together, and they had a whole like tennis group crew. So we'd still like occasionally see each other through that and playing tennis. And then it wasn't until we were teenagers that we end up working in the same supermarket. And it was like, all right, what are you doing here? And got into like going out to gigs and open mic nights and stuff together from that kind of age.
Yeah. It's interesting when, how friendships work like that, they can cross and come back and everything, right? My best friend and I have been friends for like 20 years. And so our sons are best friends, now, and even though they're like a year and a half apart, but I'm on this verge of a move to 2 towns away. Yeah. And so it's going to change the dynamic. They're not going to be at the same school anymore. But it'll be interesting to see.
See how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna obviously my buddy and I are gonna continue to be friends and everything. That's not changing. We'll get the kids together, but it'll be interesting to see what that does to the dynamic of their friendship too. We'll see. But yeah. So tell me a little bit about what music was on in the household when you were growing up. What did your parents listen to?
Oh, that's an interesting one. My mum was really into more musicals and stuff like that, and Barbra Streisand, and blaring out stuff which I really didn't like.
You didn't go for it, huh?
No, and would be like, I think it drilled into my love of like big horn sounds and stuff like that. But a lot of the stuff, it would be like I was kind of anti it, would always be hunting out my own kind of thing against that. And my stepdad used to play Prince, Purple Rain a lot in the car.
Just
whenever I get a lift somewhere and ask for a lift out, can you drive me into town and can I get a lift here or something? They'd like always be playing Purple Rain if it was something we could kind of like get on board with together.
Yeah, well, I can get down with Purple Rain more than the Streisand too. So I don't blame you there.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you started kind of listening to music yourself, like what were you listening to growing up? What did you start out with?
Oh, there's too much, I guess. I went through so many different like areas. I remember the biggest like impact. I remember buying it, like the first album of like being obsessed with was Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory, when that one came out. That was like quite an obsessive one of being like obsessed with the album, like buying the CD, really going to town on all the covers and everything like that. Definitely had some obscure like weird singles before, but that was the kind of starting point going into a lot of music like that. And I was into like Less Than Jake and Real Big Fish. They were like the first bands I saw, actually. Real Big Fish and like Goldfinger.
All bands I've talked to, by the way, like over the years. I mean, that's the stuff I grew up on too. So I've interviewed them all.
Like it was like it's like TV as well. It's like I remember having in the UK, it's like MTV2 was a really good video channel, like music channel, and they had Kerrang TV as well, and there was another one, I can't remember what it was at the time, but you would just watch them. You'd have them on in the background, or you just like listening to music on it all day long in a way. And that was the kind of a lot of the music that was coming out of those channels. I remember MTV2 one, there was a late night from like 1 p.m. to like, or 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning that would have loads of really amazing alternative music. And it was, I remember finding like bands like Little Dragon and Whitest Boy Alive and loads of people like that in those kind of times. And that opened me up to a lot more of the like left field alternative pop that kind of inspires our sound now.
Yeah.
Especially then.
Yeah, it was crazy times. I mean, like the fact that we used to have channels dedicated to music videos and everything.
Yeah.
Like what a part of our culture and growing that was, right? So
it was massive, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of YouTube now in that same way, but it's not like it's not curated in a way. You're your own curator when it comes to these platforms.
You're in control more, but which is a good thing. But it's also like, hey, you know, it's cool to be introduced to stuff, you know, through the ways like that before, right? You know, I was on a road trip with my kids this weekend, and so we were listening to a lot of music, and it's like we're taking turns on songs, and so I listened to their crap and for a bit, and then you get to my song, and then I was like, I put on Jesus of Suburbia by Green Day because it's like a 9-minute song, and I was like, and I was telling my daughter, I was like, you know, there. I remember when MTV had a music video for this, which was nuts because it was 9 minutes and that sort of thing didn't happen, you know. But that album was so big that it
had the budget and they did.
It was huge, but that was crazy times. So tell me about some of your bands with Dave that you, I'm sorry, Luke, that you had growing up. Like you guys were in multiple different bands together.
Yeah, we did. There was like a little bit of thing when at the schools that we were at. I was in one called Ferndown, and he was in one called Ringwood, and they were about a couple of miles from each other. But there was both schools had quite a few bands at each one, and we set up like more of a Scary band at R1, I guess, and they were a bit more into their indie and Libertines and all that kind of future heads at that school. And it wasn't until we kind of graduated like A-levels, so like college, that we then started doing bands around that time. And I guess it basically the two schools like merged at that point. And they were a bit like indie punky, I guess, is what we were doing back then. And then through the years, like, when we were at uni and we started playing music together a bit more, we were doing more of a Death from Above thing, I guess. Like Luke was playing drums, I was playing bass, and that was the main thing. And then Luke would sing as well, and we do that kind of dynamic. And that's when Katie started to get involved as well with like coming around and started to like play cello and bits. And then I guess it's where she learned to sing. She started singing on top of stuff, like, oh, okay, this is turned into something else.
Yeah. And what were the names of the bands? Do you like? I'm sure they were great.
One of them was called the Shutdowns.
Okay.
Another one was called Aloha Soho.
Dig it.
Yeah. What's some of the more? One of them that we called ourselves when it was actually all three of us was Lady and the Tramps was another one.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. I can't remember. There's one more. I can't remember what it was now. At one point, one of the other younger bands. There's maybe many different silly names over the years.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so what were, obviously these were bands that you built up and kind of to teach you to get to where you are right now.
Yeah.
What were some of the takeaways that you had from those bands?
I guess it's kind of just like how to just like playing in front of people already, not building it off of your own like original music without any experience of like standing in front of people and playing. And some of the dynamics of working with some people in bands, you kind of get a sense that like you can clash a lot and there's going to be some points where it's going to be hard to work with, and also like what can happen when you're in recording studios and stuff as well. Like it can, from the outside perspective, it can seem like such a great thing to be doing, but sometimes when you're in a recording studio, you're sat around all day, not doing much, kind of waiting for your turn to play or do your part or something like that. And that, like, to be like, yeah, it's not like super exciting going into a recording studio. Maybe have a book or something at hand, or something that you can keep yourself like busy with and inspired by at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So you've done some touring, like even different countries and everything. Tell me about some of the tours that you guys have been on.
Oh God, the ones we've been on. So I guess in the sort of post-COVID kind of world that we're in now, we've done the UK tour. We've managed to pull off a UK tour in that time, and we've had some festivals and some bits and pieces pick up, and we've started to venture outside of the UK again this year. So we've been to Dublin, did our 2 shows in Dublin this year, and we just got back from Snowbombing Festival in Austria as well, and we had a show in Istanbul the month before that too. Wow. So that's already just this year, and then we've got the full US tour, like in now a couple of weeks' time actually. So it's like the prep for that, but it's kind of feels like we're back to this sort of momentum or level we were working at a few years ago in 2019, because 2019 was a really, really busy year for us. That was kind of where it went big quite quickly, because it's the first time we embarked out of the UK on like a European headline tour and a US headline tour, North American headline tour. And we did 2 in Europe and in North America within the same year. So, and it kind of, wow, the level that we stepped up from especially the North American tour, we really noticed it with that one, what the venue sizes and capacities we played on that first little run. We did South by Southwest at the start, and then like a short run from like doing San Fran, LA, Chicago, did Toronto, Montreal, and New York and Washington. And that was intense. It was really intense, but playing at like a 250 cap venue in San Francisco to then playing in like the Fillmore at a 1200 cap venue within the same year, and being
okay. Like, so you played the Fillmore in San Francisco
last time. Yeah.
So that's my favorite venue of all time. I love it.
Is it? It's amazing. Oh, yeah. It's so good.
There's so much energy there, and in the walls, the apples, I mean, are magic. Like, I mean, it's incredible. Like, I mean, I have had a lot of my history there as well, you know? Yeah. I mean, so tell me about the experience of playing the Fillmore.
It was epic, actually. It was quite a bit more of a shock. I guess it was the only venue as well what I did on that tour. It was the biggest one for us on that tour. But it's actually going into a venue that's unionized as well, working in a venue where there is obviously all the crew there. It's not kind of crossed that threshold. So getting more of that experience walking in. But walking into the poster room, because I'm from a design background. Like I studied graphic design at university and have designed gig posters in the past. So walking into it's literally a museum of gig posters.
Your mind's blown, right? Like,
it's mind's blown, and like they make their own posters. So we've got one here on the wall.
Oh, you got a Fillmore poster? Yeah, you got to show me.
I've got a Fillmore poster. So.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there we go. So
we've got awesome.
We've got a Fillmore poster. So getting some of them, and they printed loads of them up as well, and just for us to take away. It was like, oh man, the experience of doing this is amazing. This like feels like a real achievement pulling this one off.
Yeah, I have so many Fillmore posters, you know, from shows over the years, and I have never had a place to put them. And so now, I just bought my first house, and so I'm like, I was talking to my buddy, you know, and he's like, I was thinking about it the other day. You should have your Fillmore posters framed, and put them up. And I'm like, that's a great idea. It's expensive to do that, but it's a great.
Yeah, but it's worth it.
yeah. I mean, so many freaking memories and shows that, you know, inspired me, and the artwork's amazing, you know, as well. But for you, I mean, obviously as well, that's a pretty cool milestone, because they only do those for shows that sold out, right?
Yeah.
So,
you have to hit over the 80% marker to get a poster, and we just did it. And I was just like, yes, classes sell out. We've done it. We've got a poster.
Yeah. Did you guys get to be a part of like who did the artwork for it?
No, it was we didn't know we were getting one. we didn't know what it was like. As we walked into the dressing room, they had it like there as you walk in, so it was just like, whoa, you're just not expecting it. You're kind of caught off guard, and then you kind of look around at the other posters that are in that dressing room, and it's like, and then you've got like 13th Floor Elevators kicking around there. You've got some serious names that have just been
Jefferson Airplane, Tom Petty,
like,
everybody.
The Doors everywhere. It's just like, oh my god, this is where so much of it birthed from, isn't it? This is the place, and like the whole crew, just a lot of fun. And we had the lighting rig. We've built our own lighting rig that we kind of take with us. It's just like a load of LED tubes and stuff. But on that tour, we didn't have them programmed already ourselves on our point. It's kind of what we were working on as the tour was progressing, but just gave them to the lighting engineer there. But she was amazing. She just like took them on, was just up for it, put on an amazing show with them, and it's just like, yes, this is great. I kind of want to be watching our show from the crowd this time around instead.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And so you're going to come back to San Francisco, and you're playing the Regency May 30th, right?
That is right. Yeah, 30th of May.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great place too. I've seen some good shows there. Actually, my favorite concert of all time was at the Regency. It was this Bowie celebration. Shortly after he died, and it was led by Gary Oldman. Actually, Gary Oldman and the actor and friends. And there were 75 musicians all throughout the night, just playing Bowie songs, like 3.5 hours of Bowie, and we got to cover it and interview, tons of artists that were playing and everything. It was so cool.
Amazing, yeah. That's it. Yeah. Just a full night of it.
Oh yeah.
I wish I'd got to see Bowie back in the day. That's it. I wish I could have experienced some of these shows, but it's like, not like a relived, imagine not like a band going back out. It's like at the time, it's heyday, it's peak in those venues where it's just like that vibe is happening.
Yeah, they're just too young. We missed out on a lot of that.
That's it.
I'm like, God, I started going to concerts too. I mean, I've been going to concerts my whole life, but it started, missed all of that,
That's certain like pockets, certain scenes, and certain different times.
Yeah. So 2019, the Omnitone Collection. So tell me about the process of making that album, how it came together for you guys.
Okay, the Omnitone Collection was like, it was a big deal, I guess. It was us making our first album, a debut album, and it was we'd wanted to make an album quite a while, and we were constantly kind of trying to. I guess it's what we were trying to do around the time of Seas and Sand, so a few years before, but we never felt like we were ready to pull it off. And a lot of the music that went onto the Omnitone Collection anyway were some of the initial recordings that were kind of initiated some of the ideas from around the Seas and Sand writing time anyway. So they'd been songs that had been there for a couple of years. And we've really kind of lent in with the artwork a lot as well. We've kind of worked on the album, but we were still thinking of the artwork alongside at the same time. So a lot of that kind of crossed over and bled into sort of the way some of the lyrical context was kind of being finished a little bit for some of the tracks. But it took us quite a while to get to that point, and we finally worked with a producer properly on that album as well for the first time. So that was like going to someone's studio with the tracks at a point where we were like pretty happy in a demo level, and some of them more so kind of finished, and putting a better polishing touch on it and re-recording things to make them better. And also with songs where we were struggling with certain arrangement aspects, being able to kind of hear all three voices and take the best ideas into what the album turned into. So I think we were all really happy with the outcome of that, but it was definitely a lot was thrown into that album to make it what it was. And we went so far with the artwork. That was where we really pushed it, and I don't think people quite got it or sort of get to really appreciate the whole beauty of what we tried to put in there. You kind of have to buy the deluxe album, because there's a whole 12-page booklet with all the photographs of all the kit and a complete creative writing spiel. It's like we created a complete corporation making these things, and there's a whole tech spec related to every device that's there. It's got a lot of information in.
Yeah. And so you got in with a producer. Who was the producer, and how did you land on them?
A producer was Ali Chan. He's a Bristol-based producer. We'd met him before recently. Met him before around the Seeds and Sand time. We met him in Bristol. He used to run Toy Box Studios in Bristol. And we were kind of like, we wanted someone local because we wanted someone that we could sort of work in Bristol with, because we wanted to kind of still work on our studio as well, still kind of keep a lot of production control ourselves. But he was a really good fit. He just moved to a new studio and built a new studio that was literally a 5-minute walk from our studio already anyway. And his approach was exactly the way we work. Hardware, he's got so much kit. It's a big Trident desk in there, all the preamps that we could ever dream of, all the compressors, all the synthesizers, everything you kind of need, that we just got really stuck in quickly, and we were getting what we needed to down in such a quick, like, working sort of time frame in there with him in that way. And working in a studio with someone you're paying kind of big rates on a daily basis makes you work for it quickly as well.
Yeah.
So it lit a fire up our ass to really kind of pull it off and work that extra bit faster, and just like with a bit more pressure behind it. And I think it got the best out of us on that back end of the album. But we're really good friends with him now, and like our unit here we're practically neighbours to him now. His proper studio is just literally there. So
it's right over there.
Yeah. So we did Swimming Static with him as well, but we did more of the production ourselves, I guess, with Swimming Static. And going into Ali's to record all Katie's vocals, like, he's amazing with dealing with vocals. He's worked with Alison Sudukas, I don't know how to pronounce the name, recently, and quite a few bands. He's worked with Kate Tunstall in the past. He's done a lot of stuff with PJ Harvey as well in the past, and he's good friends with Adrian Utley, because Adrian Utley was another guy that we were like, "Ooh, is he?" But I feel like if we went down that route, we would have nerded out a bit too much on the gear, too much.
Yeah.
Bringing the Portishead influence in, I think we would have gotten a bit too lost. Whereas Ali felt like a better fit to just get us to our end goal quickly and clearly.
Sure. And so as you're pulling this album together, are you thinking about how it'll translate to a live show as well?
That's always there in the back of the mind nowadays, because when we made the Omnitone, it was kind of the first time of making an album where it was more studio focused, where a lot of the time some songs were written and never played live, whereas previously we'd always played our music live before it was released, every track that was kind of being written. Whereas now there's that kind of going into the studio, making the music. We'll just record aimlessly for an hour and build songs around certain ideas. And it can get to a point where you're like overdubbing the 100th channel of synth and tweaking thing that you're like, how the hell are we going to play this live? And there are a few tracks off Swimming Static, the most recent album, where trying to do the rehearsals, we've noticed that some can't translate in the way that we need to. Like, Katie's layered so many harmonies and so many like vocal elements that they just don't cut quite as they need to in a live context. And we don't run backing track or anything like that. Like, to do those sort of things, we like to run it all synthesizers being sequenced, guitars, loopers, like all created live in front in that capacity. So it's got harmony effects and loopers, and she stacks loops and does stuff, but there was no way we could get that one to like sacred to this point where it's like that cuts like the record. And it's like, do we put it out or do we put a weaker performance? So it's like, it's kind of, where do you cap it? Like, which one's worth doing, which one's not?
Yeah. And so, I mean, so how do you make that decision, right? I mean, because you obviously put out a great record, something that you're really proud of and you can take there. And so, did you feel like you had to cut a little bit in the live performance, or you were able to make adjustments so it balanced?
I think we've done a bit of both. So in some places we have cut, where we did play, one or two tracks where we've played them. They've been tough to play. they've gone down well, but we know they don't sound as good as what our like sort of threshold of perfection is at, and it's like it's not quite as good as what some of the other tracks that translated so well to a live context, that would rather focus on them. And we've also actually got quite a lot of music now that we're trying to slip into a set, and we can only play so much, because otherwise the amount of shows we're actually kind of committing to at the moment, kind of building back into it, we need to be very cautious of like Katie and her voice, because she has lost her voice performing before, and like obviously if any possibility of getting ill or anything falls out, we've had to cancel shows like last year on the UK tour due to her losing her voice on like after one of the shows, just being a little bit ill, pushing herself too much. And it's the last thing is just, we don't want to then be like trying to cram every song we've got into them to have this 2-hour set that was just impossible to perform and take on tour. So it's like how to balance that as well, which affects what tracks you kind of perform live. And it helps with that aspect of being like, well, we've really struggled performing that one as much as we'd love to, and it's a really good strong track on the album. We'll get rid of it because it's
too much. It's so
too much. Yeah, it's just too much chat. It's too much of a challenge.
Yeah. And so as this album came out, and then obviously not too far after COVID hit, you guys are just hitting your stride really at that point. What was that like for you guys, as you know, as you're getting this momentum and getting this traction?
I guess it was at the time we were okay with it, because we just we did our last show in like February in 2020 off the back of all that touring, all of 2019, and literally on that day, the day after that show, we went straight into the studio and locked ourselves away and just wrote music. That's what our intention was for the next few months, was to do nothing, write music for the Swimming Static album. So it was a month in that COVID started to become a thing, and that's when we were only just starting to like come up for air for the first time, after just being in there every day recording sessions and being like, okay, so what's happening here? And for us, we're just like, well, okay, we're just gonna carry on in the studio. And we had a couple of festivals cancelled, which we were quite glad about, because we were so focused on writing that we were like, okay, that's actually a bit of stress out the way. But then after a little while, it's like when you start to like rear ahead and coming back at it, realize we have almost like wiped that whole year's worth of work that we did in 2019 away, and having to rebuild that like process of getting that touring schedule back in, getting your name back onto the whole kind of festival circuit in the same way. But it feels like it's back there again now. It's just all of a sudden it's a bit like, well, calm down now, put the brakes back on a bit.
People are ready to get out and see some live shows, right? So
exactly, everyone's kind of ready for it now massively. It feels like we were a bit of a guinea pig sort of period last summer in UK, where we were doing festivals again and seeing how it was going. It worked well, but it was also quite chaotic. It was chaotic, really chaotic. But it feels like everyone's back on board. Everyone remembers what to do as well. They've brushed off all the like cobwebs. They're like, I remember now. I remember what I was doing before.
Yeah. I remember like you talked like last summer. I think it was like the same here. I mean, I drove down like 10 hours down Southern California or something to get to that first show, where you paid far too much for a ticket, and you're in a square that's etched out, sort of thing. It's like this isn't how it's supposed to be.
This doesn't feel like, quite right.
It doesn't it? Live music, you gotta just scratch that itch and
that's it. That is it.
Yeah, it sounded like for you guys though, at least, I mean, the timing was mostly planned, and worked out for your benefit. You got the tour out of the way, and then you were able to start writing anyway. And it's like tear up over, there's this thing going on. Okay, COVID.
That's it. It was quite like that. It was like, wow. And it was just like, as it kind of carried on, it was more like, okay, now could do with some shows, need to kind of be earning some money now, and like trying to make that work. It's obviously a challenge, and but I think we lucked out. I really do think we got quite lucky with the situation we put ourselves in. As had it been for us a year beforehand and we'd had to cancel that 2019 year, for us, I think we'd be in a position where we'd be back to like working jobs to sort of sustain our living, and we wouldn't be kind of where we are now. I don't think we would have got the second album out in a good like time frame or anything. We'd be like, are we doing this or not, sort of thing, which I imagine for a lot of bands is going to be this sort of the grim reality, which is really shit. But yeah.
I talked to so many bands whose albums were like ready to come out at the beginning of COVID, and then there's like had to hold it for 9 months, a year, and then I guess we just put it out, and then not be able to tour behind it, and everything, and
that's it. It's tough, and that's it, because we've like had the album come out, the Swimming Static, last year, but we weren't able to do the tours when they were timed for off the back of it, and like we'd already moved them twice, and then we finally got them in now, but now they're sort of like so late after the fact, it doesn't feel like they're part of that touring campaign. And you're trying to like generate more press to remind people that you're on tour because you don't have any new music out. So like, oh, right, you're playing in the town in a few weeks. All right.
Yeah. And so talk to me about your approach with Static. Like, how did you go in with that album on the heels of, of what you'd already done? What were you trying to take that worked from your first full length and implemented into the new album?
I guess with that, it was more our workflows of just how we write music and how we operate in the studio was like really lent in on making that as best it could be. And we spent a lot of time and made like a chunkier investment in just like getting the studio ready beforehand. Didn't do any like, let's try this out or let's test sort of thing. It was literally built the studio properly, checked everything so it just operated, so that when we started to record the initial sessions, it meant we didn't need to worry about anything. We could just hit record and play, perform. We're all synchronized. We can just see what comes from it. And that was the approach we wanted to start with no preconceived ideas really from any old music, anything beforehand. We started with a completely like blank slate. It was like, there's nothing here. We haven't got anything. No one's walking in with, I've got this riff, I've got this like thing. It was just literally starting the day afresh. And every day we did at least three recordings on a daily basis, basically, that were completely loose. And I guess we had this idea of wanting it to be a dancier album this time around when we started, as we been making our live show more dancey every time we were like pushing it a bit further and further. But as we were just doing more of these jams, it was just, we were going in so many different directions every day. It's just like one morning you're writing a grungy song, and the next day, like by the afternoon, you're in like tech house sort of vibes, and then next day we're in R&B vibe, and then it's just like, but we just lean into that. If we feel like that's what the song wants to be, that's what it wants to be, and we'll lean into it and embrace it, but without trying to cross it into being like cheesy or trying to really, it's just like take the best elements and make them shine in that way.
Yeah,
it's like it's an R&B rhythm, but let's just go for it then. Let's enhance that R&B rhythm as best as possible.
Yeah, and how do you feel you find that balance with Moog and with Katie? Like, I mean, because I know Katie's into kind of darker music, so if you're trying to go for a dance thing, is she kind of like, I don't know, it needs to be a little heavier sort of thing?
I guess it's more we start to bounce around off each other like quite often in the studio that way. It's like we'll just start, so it depends. It's like anything goes, we'll see what happens. Like, I guess with this one, I got a Tempest drum machine, so I was actually starting a lot more of the beats initially on this one. But it would just start with sort of something, or like someone would just kind of create a loop, and as soon as someone's kind of got a loop in, it kind of dictates at least some of the key and the notes, or like a little bit of riff to play with. And then how we bounce off of that, and it takes a little while. Katie will kind of do a lot of the oohing. For like the first 20 minutes, there'll be lots of like oohs and things like that happen, and she might hit a melody or something, and then you just get a few lines that trigger, and then off the back of that, you're like, oh, okay, and then it like triggers something else. Like, I need to throw a little bass line under there, and then it can just gradually bounce it around until you kind of sculpted like a wall of sound, basically. It's kind of what tends to happen. and you're like, got every instrument kind of sequenced right now, and it's all looping, and then when it gets to a point, it's just like it can veer off in a completely different direction. And sometimes someone will just like probably not lean in or have as strong an idea, but they just kind of sit back and maybe just focus on one little element. Like it could be that Katie was always going to be just like playing a cello, singing vocals, or she's got little bass synths that she's playing around with normally. Like me and Luke have got drum machines, synthesizers, guitars and basses and whatnot around. So with us, sometimes it's like someone ends up maybe leaning into doing more of the beats and bass and sounds and build up, while the other person is actually more just playing on the keys and playing a guitar line for a little while. And then it could completely flip by later on in the day, where then it's the other person is doing much more like, I've got the drum machines going and some basses going and play on the keys on this side instead. And like, yeah, it kind of just like hops up and down. Sometimes it can just be like, that's awful, that was dreadful, what were we up to?
Yeah. How close was the final product to what you envisioned kind of going in?
Very different. It was very different. Yeah, like I was expecting us to be much more like four to the floor, I feel like, in this one. I thought sounded like that's what we all kind of wanted to make a little bit more as well. We wanted a bit more like oof, but after a lot more of the writing, it felt like we'd gone into like a more poppy, darker edge in a lot of areas, and more brooding like rhythms as well, that are a bit more grinding in some places. That I guess is actually more of all of our tastes have shone through a bit more on this album. I think more so than they have done in the past. There's been more crossover of all of the diverse kind of music aspect that we've been into, especially the darker element. That's definitely come in a lot more this album round. Notice that a lot. It's just like the more minor, aggressive sort of melodies and beats in there.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And so looking forward, do you have stuff that like didn't make it into this album that you're already like looking ahead to the next, or where do you land there?
Yeah, we kind of are. I don't know when we're going to release it yet though, but we are trying to run a lot of the like demos. We had a big pile of demos when we finished the album, of about 17 to 18 tracks that we've whittled down. We released some of them as B-sides already, but we're going to finish off the remainder into tracks. And I think we're also going to just release some of the obscure moments from all the original sessions, because there was like something like 55 sessions that are all like a good hour long. Wow. And there's a lot of different parts in some of them that are really, really good. So we're going to try and stitch something together out of that and kind of sign off this project kind of completely that way. So when we go to start our next album, we are kind of working with that complete clean palette again. It's a really nice, feels really good to start a new project like that without old leftover ideas, because then you're trying to work something in and it's not quite right, and it's just that sometimes you're trying to make something fit when it shouldn't fit, and because you've got it left over and it can just draw something out. So we're like, let's do what we did last time, or didn't do last time well enough, and just wrap everything up. Here's all the leftovers, here's all the little juicy goodies. It's like we'll never make these into real tracks, but they sound great, so here you go. And get that out. So come next year that we can focus purely on new music again.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, David, and so as we wind out, why don't you share what would you say is your best live show moment that you've had so far?
Ooh, best live show moment. There's quite a lot at different points and in many different places, but it's tough. A real big achievement for us was the Roundhouse in London. That was a really big deal and a big special show. We had all of our family there, so it's like the first time that everyone has like come down in that kind of capacity and all been in the same space. But then doing Bowery Ballroom in New York last time was a big deal as well. That's a really special venue, and the crowd in there was incredible. And Luke started crying on stage because he was just like so overwhelmed with like it was incredible actually, that show. There's just been a lot over the years, and it's kind of just like, yeah, starting to do these ones again now and getting back into it. You can see that I feel like some of the most magical memories for people's shows are going to come over the next year or so, because for some people of a younger generation, I can't imagine what if this had been me 10 years ago, getting out to music now, going to a festival, and like the feeling that some people are going to have is going to be so big, so fucking big, that's I feel like some of the best shows for us will probably happen across some of this next year or so. Maybe America this time we could have the best one.
Yeah, it could happen. You have a great tour lined up ahead, so that's super awesome, you know.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one a lot, actually. Long time coming, US tour. Long time coming.
for sure. And I hope you enjoy the show back in San Francisco. I don't know if I can make it. I don't want to commit because I got a festival the weekend before that I'm covering, and that's the date. Like, right then is when I have to be out of this house, and so I have to finish up here and everything. So I can't commit, but I'm so excited for you, and hope you have a great tour ahead, and enjoy the most of it, because it's, you know, we're back in live music again. You got 2 albums, you know, under you to support, and lots of people were freaking interested and down to see you guys. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, David, for taking the time today. I hope you have a great evening ahead, and best to you and the rest of the band. Okay.
Thank you very much.
That was the interview with David Havard of Elder Island here on Concert Pipeline. And that takes us to the final segment on the program, the music news. All right, I have just a couple of stories here to wind out the program. The Coachella is the biggest one. This is weekend 2 of the Coachella Music Festival, and like there were in weekend 1 with a number of surprises. Arcade Fire played weekend 1, and that was not expected or announced. So that's very exciting. There were some other surprises that happened weekend 1 as well. And while weekend 2 isn't over, there have already been some surprise appearances to the festival. So let's go through a couple of those appearances. This did kick off this past Friday at Empire Polo Club. And so Baby Keem pulled out all the stops for his evening performance as he brought out Kendrick Lamar. That's a big get for his set. There's videos online as well, of course. And Lamar entered on stage surrounded by large projections of fire as the crowd, slowly realizing who is on stage, starts to collectively freak out. And Lamar's appearance coincides with his recent announcement of his long-awaited 5th studio album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, which will arrive on May 13th. Who else was joining? Okay, so last weekend, Shania Twain joined Harry Styles on stage for a couple of her songs. This weekend, Harry Styles brought out Lizzo. She just is fresh off of hosting and being the musical guest for Saturday Night Live. So I'm sure a lot of people are really stoked for that appearance. And they've performed together in the past. They joined forces for One Direction's What Makes You Beautiful and a rendition of Gloria Gaynor's 1978 disco classic, I Will Survive. Okay, so another, I guess people weren't really surprised about Lizzo because she did post a video on TikTok on Friday saying she would be headed to the festival. So who else do we have who showed up? Let's see, Phoebe Bridgers welcomed Arlo Parks to the stage, as she did in weekend 1, while Omar Apollo joined Daniel Caesar during his set later in the evening. And then a week after Billie Eilish welcomed Damon Albarn and De La Soul's Postnus to the stage, the singer had another surprise guest in store for her second headlining gig Saturday, Hayley Williams, who came out to lead an acoustic rendition of Paramore's Misery Business. So lots of guest star performances at Coachella this weekend. Okay, a couple more stories for you before we wrap. The never-ending rumors around Van Halen reunions or tour, I guess you could say, continue to be talked about. David Lee Roth has issued his first statement regarding the recent headlines about a possible Van Halen tribute tour after former Metallica bassist Jason Newsted leaked news on his invitation to participate in the project during an interview with the Palm Beach Post last week. Joe Satriani told the Rock of Nations with Dave Kinchin podcast that he has been in talks with Roth and Alex Van Halen for about a year about doing something. A tour like something like that was going to be a true tribute to Eddie and the Van Halen legacy. And so Eddie Van Halen said, in my mind, Van Halen 4K in the age of COVID is going to require two of us for every position. Satriani and Lukather, Anthony and Newsted, Al or Tommy Lee. Probably the only one who could do my job today would be Pink. Interesting. The singer's comments reference a list of players that could include original Van Halen bassist Michael Anthony, and of course all the people that I already named. And so we'll see what happens there in terms of that tribute show. Would be pretty cool, I think. And then the last story I have for the music news today is that Mike Campbell is reunited with Heartbreakers drummer Stan Lynch for the first time for the first tour in 30 years. He is an old friend who I love dearly, Campbell says. We've had the best time reconnecting and we can't wait to get out there and play music together again. And so Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs took the stage at the Fox Theater in Boulder, Colorado. And they'll be joined by Petty and the Heartbreakers drummer Stan Lynch. He's going to stay on the road with them through late June, marking the first time they've toured together since Into the Great Wide Open run in 1992. And that's all there is about the actual story. So that is our show for today. Again, I want to thank Elder Island for taking the time to be on the program. And as we move into May, we're going to work on getting some interviews with bands that are playing Bottle Rock. And I think I may have previously hinted that we might have an interview with Atlas Genius. That is not going to happen. They led me along, and after we had already had it set up, they're deep in the studio right now, working on their long-awaited album. I really look forward to seeing them at Bottle Rock just the same, but not going to be able to rail in an interview with Atlas Genius. So there's other stuff in the works. I'm not going to tease anything now because nothing's 100% locked. So you'll just have to tune in the Concert Pipeline to see who is on next. So for all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. I'll catch you next time.